Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Andre the Podcast. I'm Andre Lacey. Today's show is all about reflection, about looking back at a year that honestly I never saw coming, but one that I absolutely needed. Today is more of a personal show. As we near 2025 closing, I wanted to slow things down for a moment and take you on a little journey with me. Not just as a journalist, not just as a podcast host, but as a person. Because this time last year, let me be real with you, things looked nothing like they do right now. So what was going on this time last year? Let's get into it. Around this time in 2024, getting ready to go into 2025, I was in one of the toughest seasons of my life, honestly. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and even professionally. I was dealing with an unexpected health challenge that forced me to make a decision I did not want to make. A decision that hurt. A decision that shook my sense of identity and really shook me to my core. I had to step away from my very first job. A job I worked hard for after graduating from college. And at that time, especially for those who know, there was a level of uncertainty after graduating from college because I didn't have a job right away. It was the job that I deeply cared about because it was my first job and my first job in media, honestly. A job that taught me and that really brought me what I thought would be a part of my future for quite a while. And then when your body and your mind tells you, well, that's enough. You don't really get to negotiate with that. And you have to listen. And so I stepped away not knowing what was next. And if I'm being completely honest with you, and ATP family, you know, we seek truth here and we tell truth here. That was the scariest part. Because for many of us, we're so used to having a plan, a direction, a title maybe, a role. Something that tells you who we are. And suddenly, mine was gone. And that's very scary to think about. So let's go to the breaking point. The breaking point for me. I won't go into the specific medical details today about what's been going on with me, but maybe at some point. But I will say this. That season pushed me to the edge. Physically and emotionally. I was exhausted, I was drained, and I was wrestling with the quiet question that felt louder every day. Who am I if I'm not working? Who am I without a title? There were days where I felt defeated. There were nights where I felt lost. And honestly, there were moments I didn't even recognize myself. But the truth is, sometimes you have to hit a breaking point before you realize something deeper. The version of you that's breaking is the one that you really might need, or what some would say is the one that's really needed to go all along. Now let's move on to the pause that saved me. While this is a lot to take in, I think it's important to share with you what really happened. When I stepped away in November of 2024, I entered a season that I can only describe as uncomfortable rest. And for many, you might think, rest sounds peaceful, right? We think about sleep or vacations or even taking a break. But real rest, the kind that makes you sit with yourself, isn't always peaceful or comfortable. It's quiet, it's still, and it's uncomfortable when you've been running for so long. And for me, I've always been doing something, and I've always been on the move in some shape, form, or fashion. So that definitely wasn't easy for me. But that pause, think about it. That pause, that silence, that space I didn't ask for. It ended up being the thing that saved me. Because in that stillness, I heard something I hadn't heard in a long time. My own voice. My own voice. Not the voice that's trying to meet deadlines. Not the voice that's trying to please everybody. Not the voice that's trying to keep up. My voice. The real one. So, what is it like finding my voice again? What was it like? Well, that's where this podcast came in. Andre the Podcast became more than a platform. It became a lifeline. And for those of you who have been with me on this journey since day one, you know it started in college, kind of as a dare to try something different. I started speaking again. I started sharing again. I started creating again. But this time, it wasn't coming from pressure or on a dare. It was coming really with purpose. Coming from with purpose. It was coming from purpose. My storytelling deepened. My interviews became more intentional, not that they weren't before. My commentary became even more honest. I wasn't just talking to people anymore. I was talking with them. From a place of truth, you know. And somewhere along the line, I realized that my journalism was evolving. Not because of a newsroom, not because of a title, but because I had finally reconnected with why I do what I do in the first place. Think about it. We all have a purpose and a mission in life. Mine is to tell the truth, to amplify voices, to bring light to stories that matter, and yes, to share my own even when it's necessary. And let me tell you, as a journalist, it's not always easy to do that because we're taught that the story is never about us. Never. So, what was the unexpected rise of 2025 like? Here's how 2025 looked for me. I'll tell you this. When life wants to restore you, it doesn't ask for your permission. This year brought opportunities I never imagined. It brought clarity, it brought more discipline, and it brought growth. From this podcast, this show that I still pinch myself about, becoming nationally syndicated, to reconnecting with my purpose as a journalist, to finding stability and direction again. Everything I thought I lost last year was making room for something better this year. Isn't it funny how life works sometimes? The health condition, it continues. But so do I. I want to be very clear and very honest here. My health journey didn't magically end when January of 2025 hit, or began, I guess you could say. I'm still navigating it. I'm still learning my limits, and I'm still adjusting. I think that's the hardest parts. Two of the hardest parts is learning my limits and trying to adjust, because you're so used to life being one way, and then it shifts and things change. But now I'm doing things with boundaries, with balance, with support, and with faith. And most importantly, with the understanding that I don't have to choose between taking care of myself and pursuing my purpose. I can do both. And I'm glad to say I am doing both. I'm doing both. So what has this year taught me? That's the interesting question. Though the year isn't over just yet, what has it taught me? Well, here's how I'm going to sum up 2025 so far with these lessons to you all. What I learned is that sometimes the door closing is a blessing. Now, in the moment, it may not feel like a blessing. It might feel like I'm failing, or why is this happening to me? But in the end, it is a blessing, because it taught me that just because one chapter ends doesn't mean that that's it for the rest of your journey. There's more to it. You couldn't have told me, and I've said it before and I'll continue to say it, you couldn't have told me that at 25 years old, especially going through what I've already gone through and continue to go through, that I would be doing what I'm doing right now. A national syndicated podcast. A podcast with my name on it. Not only do I host this podcast, I serve as executive producer, as I always have since the show debuted in season 1 in college. I'm the owner of it fully, meaning I get to make the creative decisions on what we discuss and who we have on, and I'm intentional about all of it. But it's national. I have an even higher reach, a reach that I didn't think would be possible this early on. Not in the form of a podcast, anyway. I thought that might take a few years, maybe to the point where maybe I'm in my 40s. That's where I always thought. Maybe when I'm later on in age, maybe 40 or something like that, that this podcast would grow and I would have established a voice that people could trust and depend on. Well, we plan and God laughs. And oh boy, did God get the victory. And saying, oh, no, my child. I have more destined for you than even you see for yourself. Rest is not weakness. It's a revelation. Now, I believe in rest. I do. Many of us do. But sometimes life doesn't always give us that option to rest, really. And so it can be difficult, but I chose this time around that rest was more important than anything else. And that if I did not give myself this opportunity to rest, that things could be worse. So don't think of rest as weakness. Please don't. Your purpose will always find you and will always find its way back to you. It might come in a different form. I went from working in a newsroom to being my own boss. Yes, I have a boss to report to, of course, but again, I get to decide how I do what I'm doing, and I get to be purely intentional about it. Growth often doesn't look like loss. Doesn't often look like loss, but it looks like success. So don't forget that. And finally, no season, not even the hard ones, is wasted. And with that, this was a year that I didn't see coming, but it was a year I needed. As we close out, I want to say this. As soon as 2025 closes out, remember this. If you're entering in 2026 unsure, if you're tired, if you're in a transition, if you're healing, if you're waiting for clarity, you're not behind, you're not forgotten, you're not failing, you're becoming. And sometimes becoming happens in the quiet, uncomfortable, and sometimes unexpected seasons. Thank you again for listening, supporting me, and growing with me. And we'll see you next time on Andre the Podcast. Be blessed and be encouraged.